Did you know that God has given each of us at least one great gift, and He cares a lot about how we use it? During our time together today, we'll look at Jesus' parable of the 3 servants who were entrusted with a portion of their master's riches. And then we'll consider the message that parable has for us today, explore options we have regarding our gift, and see what using our gift has to do with stepping out of the boat and walking on water. During the teaching time, you'll see the group members in the video painting on plates a picture that identifies each of their unique gifts. And I'd like to begin our session together by having each of you identify a gift God has given you. So, get some paper plates and magic markers and draw a representative picture of that gift on the plate. Have fun with it. And as you work on those, continue on to the questions to think about section in your participants guide and answer the questions there. We're going to talk in this session about the fact that every one of us has a gift and it matters what you do with it. So to help us remember that, Scott and Steve are going to hand out plates. Everybody's going to get a plate and a paintbrush and some paint. And I'd like for you to put on there a representation of a gift or a talent or an ability that God has given to you. It may be something that you enjoy doing a lot, something that you're real good at. But this is not a time to be modest, okay? God gives everybody gifts. Years ago, my father's mom passed away. And my grandfather called my mother up and he said, "Kathy, I was going through some of Florence's things in our attic and I found a box of dishes and I was gonna just give them away to the Salvation Army, but they're blue and I know that blue is your favorite color. So if you'd like to have them, you can keep them." So my mom went over to my grandfather's house and opened up this box and she found a set of the most exquisite china she had ever seen. So they started talking to relatives to try to piece together the story about this china. And what they found was that when my grandmother was a young girl growing up, on a real special occasion, like if it was her birthday or confirmation, she'd get one cup or one saucer because it was very expensive and they were not a wealthy family. And because it was so valuable, she put the china very carefully in a box and stored it in the attic and saved it for a very special occasion. And no occasion that special ever came. She never used the china. She went to her grave and she never used the greatest gift that she had ever been given. My mother got a hold of that china and she uses it promiscuously. Every chance she gets, she drags the china out. This looks something like the china, but not exactly, because my mom would not let me bring it here. When you have a great gift, there are 2 ways that you can look at it. One is you can say, this gift is too valuable to be used. It's too valuable to risk. The other way you can look at it is to say, it's too valuable not to be used. Now, every one of you is drawing right now an expression of the fact that God has given you some gift. And you will not have fulfilled your mission as a human being if you don't use the gift that God has given to you. Marcia is going to read a quote about what happens to human beings when they don't grow and develop their gifts and stagnation sets in. Marcia, would you read that for us?
Stagnation leads to sinful patterns of behavior that never get confronted and changed, abilities and gifts that never get cultivated and deployed, until weeks become months, and months turn into years, and one day you're looking back on a life of deep, intimate, gut-wrenchingly honest conversations you never had, great bold prayers you never prayed, exhilarating risks you never took, sacrificial gifts you never offered, lives you never touched, and you're sitting in a recliner with a shriveled soul and forgotten dreams, and you realize there was a world of desperate need and a great God calling you to be part of something bigger than yourself. You see the person you could have become, but did not. You never followed your calling. You never got out of the boat.
One of Jesus' most unforgettable stories is a story about somebody who's given a great gift, a great opportunity, and they just bury it. And most of us are familiar with this story of the man who gives gifts to his 3 servants. But part of what you need to understand to get this story is that Jesus is talking about a massive amount of money. A talent was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 years worth of work for somebody. And in a day when people normally wouldn't even save up as much money as they had earned in a day, a talent was a huge amount of money. So Jesus really is talking about 3 people who receive a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Did you ever have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? When Nancy and I were getting married and I was going to go on a honeymoon, I wanted to be able to go someplace really nice. And the only way that I could think of to make money, because I was in graduate school at the time, was to go on a game show. I lived in Southern California. So I actually went on a show called Tic-Tac-Dough. Anybody remember a show called Tic-Tac-Dough? And it was hosted by a guy named Wink Martindale. And I was up against the guy who had won 4 consecutive games. Well, we had about 4 or 5 consecutive tie games. There was more money in the pot than I had ever seen. And finally, this lawyer missed a question, so I had a chance to win the game. Now, the computer would randomly generate whatever category your question was going to be. The box that I needed to win, the category that came up was mixed drinks. And I could have gone for another box, but oh no, I wanted to get this one now. Wink asked the question, what's the recipe for a drink called the Rob Roy? I said, Wink, I'm a pastor at a church. I'm in trouble if I get this right, and I'm in trouble if I get it wrong. We honeymooned in Wisconsin. So once in a lifetime opportunity, and I blew it. Well, the first thing you have to understand to get Jesus' story is that the master is offering these 3 servants a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And Doug's going to read what might have been going on in the mind of one of the servants who would get a chance like this from a master. Doug, could you read that for us?
I thought my whole life was condemned to be routine. I had dreams but couldn't pursue them, passions but couldn't follow them, talents but couldn't test them. I was never in a position to plan, take risks, or take initiative. My life was comfortable. I wasn't facing starvation, but I longed for something more. I wanted to make a difference. And just when I was ready to give up hope, the master did something I've never heard of anyone doing before. He called me into his office, looked at me from behind his desk with a twinkle in his eye, and entrusted a large portion of what belongs to him to me. I can't believe he has that kind of faith in me. I can't believe I have this opportunity. I feel like a thoroughbred that's been set free to run.
Now, for 2 of the men in Jesus' story, that's the response they have. They say, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I don't want to miss it. And if you take a moment and look at whatever's on your plate, that's expressing part of the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that God has entrusted to you. It's a gift He's given to you. But it matters what you do with that gift. Matters more than you can imagine. Because of a second part of Jesus' story, the Lord of the gift is also the Lord of the settled account. Jesus says that one day the master comes back and he settles the account. He asks of each servant, what did you do with what I gave you? The idea here is all of us are going to answer that question to God one day. And we don't do so well with that because every human being has a way of trying to evade responsibility for our lives. He will not ask you, what did you do with what I gave to somebody else? It's very interesting in this story to me that the man that had 5 talents and the man that had 2 talents both invested. They took risks. They took chances. It's the guy who received only 1 talent who buried what was given to him. And I wonder if maybe it's because he got caught up comparing himself to somebody else. And the day will come when God's going to ask you, Scott or Steve or Doug or Julie, He's not going to ask you, what did you do with the gift that I gave to Amy or Shirley or Crystal or Marcia? He's just going to say, what did you do with what I gave to you? Jesus says that the master in this story is not only the Lord of the gift, and He's not only the Lord of the settled account, He's also the Lord of the reward. When the master comes back, He says to everybody that was faithful, everybody who used what they were given, well done, good and faithful servant. And He says a remarkable thing. You've been faithful in a few things. I'm going to put you in charge of many things. A lot of people have the idea of heaven that they ought to want to go there, but it's really going to be pretty boring, kind of like an eternity in Palm Springs or something. That's not the picture Jesus paints. He says, in this life, you were a steward of the gifts that I gave you. You had adventure and risk. But it's nothing compared to the way that you're going to grow and honor God and be able to serve and develop in the kingdom that's coming. And that's the reward that you're going into. I'm going to say one other thing about this. Take a look at that gift that is expressed on your plate for a moment. Because it may be for some of you that you haven't used that gift for a long time. Remember what it is that Jesus said that the third servant, the unfaithful servant, did with his gift? He took it out and did what? He buried it. And it may be that for a long time, your gift has been buried. Maybe you've been afraid. Maybe you didn't want to take a risk. Maybe you just got kind of stuck in a routine. But you need to know that the Lord of the gift, the Lord of the settled account, is perfectly able of redeeming gifts that have been buried for a long time. So I don't care how long it's been buried. Doesn't make any difference how hopeless it seems to you. God can reclaim the gift that He's given you and use it in wonderful, wonderful ways if you'll just let Him start. And today's the perfect time. Because the Lord of the gift and the Lord of the settled account is also the Lord of the reward. So use your gift. I want to ask you to exercise your imagination for a moment. Imagine that your life is over and you are led to a small room. There are 2 chairs in the room, one for you and one for God, who gets a very large chair. And then there's a VCR. God puts a tape into the machine. It has your name on it and is labeled what might have been. Imagine watching all that God might have done with your life if you'd let Him. Imagine seeing what He might have done with your financial resources if you had trusted Him to be generous. Imagine seeing what He might have done with your giftedness if you trusted Him enough to be daring. Imagine what He might have done in your relationships if you trusted Him enough to be fully truthful and fully loving. Imagine what He might have done with your character if you had dared to confess sin, acknowledge temptation, and pursue growth. As you continue on into the personal growth section for your participants' guides, think about the scenario I've just described. I don't know that God will make us watch a video like that, but I do know this is our only chance to live life as God intended. And I want to encourage you to minimize the gap between what shall be and what might have been. As long as you're living, it is not too late because you have this day. So ask God to reveal to you which gift or gifts He wants you to use. And then step out in faith, knowing that when God commands us to do something, He enables us to do it, just as He enabled Peter to walk on the water.